Hi, clients and friends. My name is Nitin Gupta. I'm the managing partner for Arizona for Atlas CPAs and Advisors, now known as Atlas Firms. Wanted to introduce you today to the topic that we're going to cover, which is Atlas CARES and FFCRA questions and answers. Uh, it is really in this topic the ideas for individuals and business and families that we're going to cover. What we're attempting to do is take some of the questions that we've received from you as clients and address those to the best of our ability as it stands right now, which kind of takes me to the disclaimer that I'm supposed to make, which is the presentation does not constitute legal advice. It is provided solely for your information and educational purposes and does not fully address the complexity of the issues or even all the steps businesses must take under the applicable laws. You should consult your professional advisors regarding your individual tax situations. Atlas CPAs and Advisors PLLC undertakes no obligation to update the information in this presentation, and no representation made that the content is error-free, and rightfully so, because as we all know, this information is changing by the minute. Having said that, I'll turn you over to my business partner, Lonnie Woodley.
Hi, everybody. And what I want to do is just quickly go over the agenda and give you some idea of how this is going to work. We'll go over the introductions of the people, but we're really talking about dealing with the loss. We do know that everybody is suffering right now because of everything that's going on with the coronavirus and other things dealing with businesses. And we want to provide you with as much information as we can, but we also want you to know that we're trying to understand the best of our ability about everybody's situation and help where we can, because Atlas is about helping you and helping businesses stay in business. There's several things that have come out. There's state legislation, there's federal legislation. We'll go into more detail on that. We're going to touch on the provisions for individuals in unemployment with frequently asked questions. And then in future webinars, future presentations, we're going to cover businesses and unemployment. We're also going to cover the SBA loan provisions and various other components that came out for business loans. Then we want to just let you know, how can Atlas help? On the presentation today, we do have Fran Coet. She is one of our partners in the Westminster office. We have Nitin Gupta, who just talked, and we have Eric Reinemer from our Denver office, and myself. And now I'm going to turn it over to Fran to kick us off.
Well, thank you, Lonnie. I guess I can be the office expert in grief, considering what happened to me about a year ago. My husband of 35 years passed away very suddenly of a cardiac arrest, and I'm fully aware of all of the issues that people go through dealing with grief. And as a nation, we're kind of going through those same issues right now collectively. Our government, I think, is trying to address this process and trying to continue with the economy and take care of its citizens. And to that end, we've seen a number of large pieces of legislation that have passed through the House and the Senate and been signed by the President to address the pandemic. As you see in the slide here, the first of those pieces of legislation was really geared towards the healthcare industry and trying to beef up the production of masks and respirators, and trying to deal with this with some emergency aid from the SBA. The second phase is a piece of legislation called Families First Coronavirus Response Act, or the FFCRA. I think generically we're just calling that the Families First legislation. Now, what this did was it expanded the sick leave. It's been federally mandated that companies with more than 50 employees have to provide family leave to employees for the birth of a child, the adoption of a child, taking care of an ill parent, that kind of thing. And those provisions were extended to all types of businesses, regardless of their size, including those that had fewer than 500 employees. This has been happening so quickly in our society that we wanted companies to be able to reach out to their employees, try to keep them on pay if they were affected by, I think, 6 different bullet points. If they contracted COVID-19, if they were caring for someone who had COVID-19, if schools were closed down and they had to care for children because of those closures. There were a number of opportunities where if they continued to pay for the sick leave or extended family leave, that the employer would be able to get a tax credit back for that ability, dollar for dollar, against their EFTPS, their federal tax deposits. The third phase, and the most recent, is the CARES legislation that started in the Senate, passed by the House last Friday, and signed into law by the President. And that addressed a payroll protection program. It affected enhanced unemployment benefits, and it mandated a rebate to families and to individuals. There is also talk about a phase 4. We're not sure what might be included in that or what it might look like, and it's very dangerous for us to even discuss pending legislation. So we want to focus on the first 3 phases and primarily on the third phase of the legislation.
Great, thanks, Fran. And I think the one thing that we want to tell everybody is that we're going to do this more in a question and answer. So we've got people that are going to ask the questions, and then we have the individuals that will be answering the questions. And like was said earlier, these are questions from you, and we're trying to answer them to the best of our ability, knowing that we have to put a caveat that they're still working on final legislation and final rules on some of these things. So let's kick it off and just say, I hear that the government is sending much needed cash rebates to individuals and children. How much can I expect and when?
And the answer to that depends upon the filing status of the individual from a tax perspective, although people who have not filed tax returns will still be eligible for the rebates. In general, individuals are going to receive $1,200 a piece. So for a married couple, that's $2,400. If they have children that are qualifying, and a qualifying child has not attained the age of 17, then for each child, there's an additional $500. And this is a rebate that is going to be sent to them first based upon direct deposit information that might have been included with their tax returns.
And one thing for everybody that's listening, you don't have to take exact notes on this. We will be sending out the slide presentation with the responses to you at some date, sometime in the near future. So we'll just tell you that you can listen and hopefully absorb some of the facts around that.
So Fran, you talked about getting $500 for children that are below the age of 17. What about children above the age of 17?
At this point, the legislation does not provide any cash rebates for children 17 to 24 that might otherwise qualify as a dependent on a taxpayer's return. If they're over 17, they're in college, but they're still a dependent of the parents, there are no rebates either for those individuals if they filed their own return or for the parents who are claiming them as dependents.
So Fran, I have a son, he's 22 years old, he's a full-time student in the college, and he works part-time, you know, making $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a year from working in, you know, retail jobs and such. And there is a tax return filed for him separately, but as a dependent child. Do you think he will get any money?
No, because he's claimed as a dependent on your return. The only way that there would have been something wrong in either direction, either you claimed him as a dependent, shouldn't have because he was emancipated, or he's still your dependent and there is no rebate for him.
Understood. Thank you.
So Eric, does the IRS need the direct deposit information if I've already filed my 2019 return and it's not included?
Yes, they are providing a mechanism whereby you can submit that, and Treasury is still working this out. they've stated that they're developing a web-based application where somebody can submit their bank information in the next week or two so that it can be direct deposited as opposed to going through the mail.
So what does happen if I don't want it direct deposit? I don't want to give them my bank account.
My assumption is that it's just going to end up going by snail mail and just take a couple weeks longer.
But I still will get a check, correct?
That's what they say. That's our understanding.
Okay.
Lonnie, may I add something here about phishing and about security? Because these checks or direct deposits are going to be going out, the bad actors in our universe are going to be trying to get the money from the taxpayers. And so I'm very concerned that there may be some bogus sites set up that pretend to be the portal where you would put your direct deposit information. And clients and individuals need to be especially vigilant right now about any kind of phishing campaigns, about clicking through. According to the IRS website, there is nothing that the taxpayer needs to do to receive the rebates. So that means IRS is not going to be asking for direct deposit information. They're not going to be calling for bank account information, and individuals just need to be very vigilant with their personal information.
According to data from one of the IT firms, phishing schemes are up over 600%, considering what's going on. And the other thing is, people have already started to get phone calls from fraudsters pretending to be from the IRS, asking for your bank information so they can update it in their systems. So please watch out for that. IRS will never call you for your bank information. Continuing on the rebates, Fran, would I have to do anything to apply for these rebates or prove eligibility to receive these checks in any way for myself or my family, which will be my spouse and my children?
No, according to the IRS website and Secretary of the Treasury Mnuchin, we don't need to do anything, presuming that we have filed our tax returns for 2019 or for 2018, and we included the direct deposit information. I think the people that have filed 2018 and 2019 provided direct deposit information with their return could see the rebate checks direct deposited into their accounts within 3 weeks, according to the Treasury. But even if the direct deposit information is not on file, they are using databases from the Social Security Administration, or they will, as Eric said, mail via snail mail into your mailboxes. And again, we want to be very vigilant to watch when those checks get queued up for snail mail, that we are monitoring our mailboxes so that we don't have physical theft out of the mailboxes.
So on the topic of eligibility, though, are there income limitations, and what income does that tie to on my tax return?
Well, Lonnie, if you go back a couple of slides, that's what the graphic from the Tax Foundation is trying to show, that for a married couple filing jointly, the cap of income to maximize the rebate is $2,500. For every $100 that their income is over the $150,000, you're going to lose 5% of the potential rebate. And this, what this graph is about, showing where basically the phase out is, depending upon whether you're married with no children, married with 2 children, or you're single. If you haven't filed a tax return, then as I mentioned, the Treasury is going to use the Social Security database and send checks to people that are simply Social Security recipients that are not filing tax returns because they don't have a filing requirement.
I got you. So if I haven't filed a tax return, but the government does know that I've received Social Security, I still may be eligible to receive a rebate.
The presumption would be that if it's a married couple, they will receive $2,400, or because they're using the Social Security database and they don't know the filing status, it would be $1,200 per individual would be deposited into their accounts. Most Social Security beneficiaries are required to give direct deposit information because of the amount of theft that there was out of mailboxes. So about 4 years ago, Social Security mandated the direct deposit for the benefits. And so I think that's a pretty rich database that they'll use to direct deposit to elderly and disabled that are receiving Social Security benefits.
So if I have not filed my 2019 return, I think you said this before, I don't have to rush to file my 2019 to get the rebate. Is that correct?
That's correct. But then the issue is if you have not filed 2019, and what if you haven't filed a 2018 return? And what the IRS is saying is that for anybody who's not filed a 2018 return, they're urging anyone in that situation to file a return as soon as possible to be able to receive the check, and at that time to include your direct deposit information. And here's a further wrinkle, something which just showed up on the IRS website today for those people that maybe are only getting Social Security and not filing a tax return. And I'm looking right at what the service is saying now on their website. People who typically do not file a tax return will need to file a simple tax return to receive an economic impact payment. For example, low-income taxpayers, senior citizen, Social Security recipients, and some veterans with disabilities who might not be filing. Supposedly, in the very near future, at the irs.gov website, they have a coronavirus section now. They will be providing information explaining for people in that group how to file a 2019 tax return with very simple information, including dependents and whatnot, and the bank information. So that's a new development from just this morning.
Aren't we glad, Eric, they've added till July 15th for us to file returns?
Yes.
And that'll make it interesting because, traditionally, anybody on non-taxable disability benefits or anything like that doesn't file a tax return at all. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and how, especially if the Secretary of the Treasury has already said, expect the checks to be coming out in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
So a lot of these people are not going to get those checks.
So more to come on that.
Right.
Yes.
So when I receive this rebate in 2019, will it be taxable income for me in 2019?
No, it won't be taxable income. It's just deemed an advance refund amount, but it's not taxable.
So Eric, I had heard something about this being reconciled on a 2020 tax return or something like that. Can you help us, tell us a little more about what that is about?
Well, yeah, I did hear that it's possible. For example, some people may not qualify for the rebate on their 2019 tax return because of their income level, but in a way, this whole money being received now is considered an advance against the 2020 tax credit. So if you don't pick it up on your 19 return, you may indeed qualify to get a credit of, for example, $1,200 on your 2020 tax return. So this could be rolling out over the entire next year for some individuals who may not qualify in 2019.
So it's either not qualify or some of the people who are behind in their tax filings for whatever reason, it'll give them an opportunity to get caught up on their tax filings and then
Correct. Yeah, so nobody should worry about the money disappearing because Treasury is committed for everybody who qualifies to get it. It just may happen over some time for some individuals.
Great, thank you.
So let's move on to some other topics, unemployment being a big one. So Fran, how do I get unemployment benefits?
Well, you need to apply to the state in which you were employed. And we have to disclaim that those offices are drinking from a very large fire hose at this point. As we all are aware, there were more than 3.4 million unemployment claims that were filed last week, or last month rather, I think during the month of March. And there are more to come. So I know the state of Colorado has kind of queued up the people who are claiming benefits, that if your last name ends A through M, then you file Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. And if you're at the last end of the alphabet, then you file on the other days, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So check with your In fact, we've got a web link at the end of this presentation that is at the federal level, that if you go through that link, it will take you to the right state office for filing the unemployment claims. If you've lost your job, if you have had a reduction in your wages, you're not going to be eligible for unemployment. You have to completely have lost your job, even if it was a part-time job.
So Fran, have any of the requirements to continue to receive those benefits changed, or are they basically the same as what they have been in the past?
Well, the legislation that came out last Friday that was signed by the president extended or added to the unemployment benefits by a flat $600 per week that is being paid by the federal government. So let's say you're in the state of Alabama, the maximum unemployment benefits may only be $275 a week, depending upon what it was that you were making. The states each have their own formula, but in addition to that $275, the federal government is augmenting that with an additional $600 benefit per week.
Is that indefinite?
No, there is a time frame, but again, Lonnie, as you recognize, this is a very fluid situation. I believe at this point that's going out for 12 weeks, but it may be extended further. Generally, the states offer about 6 weeks worth of employment, and there's some provision in the CARES Act that would extend those benefits at the federal level, but we don't know what that may look like yet, and hopefully we don't get there.
So I think the big thing would be also, we've had a lot of questions about who is really eligible, part-time people, self-employed people. What are the answers that we've seen from the legislation?
Well, and I tried to embed a bullet point here, a list of those, and this is very different than other unemployment benefits. This looks more like New Orleans with Katrina, where we have expanded to a disaster level the people that can be covered by unemployment benefits and who can receive them. So the list indicates that it includes self-employed people, gig workers, independent contractors, and certainly people who were working part-time, maybe working 2 or 3 part-time jobs. If they lost all of those jobs, they can file for unemployment benefits.
Fran, what are these gig workers? What's that?
Well, we've all heard of Uber or Lyft, Grubhub. These are all the disruptors in the economy that look for independent contractors and not employees to be the delivery people for food or for people to go from the airport to their home or what have you. And that's called a gig because it's just it could be short-term, could be long-term, but it's kind of at the ability of the worker, how many hours they want to work. So that's the gig worker.
So somebody who's doing a full-time job and driving an Uber car in the evenings will possibly qualify under both the scenarios, except still hit the maximum benefit limit to whatever that comes out to be based on.
Correct. When they apply, they want to disclose all of their income, whether it was from self-employment or as an employee, to maximize the benefits they may receive.
Okay, great.
So what if I operate an S Corp, Eric? Am I going to be eligible for unemployment compensation?
Yes, you should feel free to go down and apply just like everybody else. If you have your own S Corp and it's a restaurant or a training business and it's fallen apart, you can apply just like your workers to apply.
And will that income in the future, that unemployment compensation, will it be taxed?
Yes, it will. Always unemployment in the past and still continues to be taxable. So that'll be a part of your taxable income for the year.
So Fran, coming back to you, are all of the unemployment benefits sort of tied to terminations or layoffs only, or how does that work? Can anybody be eligible for it?
Well, yes, you have to have had a downturn in business if you're self-employed. I don't think many people are going back and forth to the airport right now. So I think the Uber drivers and Lyft drivers have definitely had an impact to their business, to their income. But you have to have been laid off or you have to have been terminated if you simply are working part-time instead of full-time. You still have employment, and I don't think you're going to be eligible for unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits are for someone who's unemployed and seeking employment. They have certain rules you have to follow. I have to admit, I've never in my life claimed unemployment benefits, but I've certainly visited their website. And during the Great Recession, we had a number of clients, including as corporation shareholders, that had to file for claims. And bear in mind, the claims at that point were extended to, I believe, almost 2 years. Do you remember that, Nitin?
Yeah, they did.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
did.
So they can go out for a very long time till the economy recovers.
And anybody that does apply for unemployment can be prepared to have to obviously seek employment, just like all the rules are. They haven't relaxed any of those ongoing activity rules, right?
No, not at this time, but they have expanded the opportunity for unemployment benefits, as we said, to the gig workers and someone who's self-employed, who's never even paid into the unemployment insurance. So that to me is a major shift, even from the Great Recession that we suffered through about 12 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
So, Eric, amongst all this, one of the things that came up was the retirement accounts. So, people have retirement accounts, 401ks, IRS, or IRAs. If cash is taken from the retirement account, what happens? Is there a special provision under COVID-19?
Yes, there are a couple of new things that were just put in place. As you know, typically when you take money out of a retirement account, if it's a pre-tax account like a traditional IRA or 401k, you take it in as taxable income and you're penalized on doing that if you're under 60 years old, for example. But in the new act, there will be no penalties at all if people choose to or need to draw money out from a retirement account up to at least $100,000. And then people will be given a chance to put that money back into the retirement account over a 3-year period. So they're trying to let people tap into that money without having the same penalties they would have experienced otherwise.
And is there a similar relief provision or some sort of a provision with regard to the, health insurance and the COBRA type of coverage? How does that work?
Well, I think now if anybody has been laid off and you lose your employer health insurance, what that will do is let everybody if COBRA is not an option, which it probably won't be, then people can just go to the healthcare exchange or the Obamacare exchange and apply there, and possibly, depending on their new lack of income level, possibly even qualify for Medicaid or some other state level program. But the health exchange will be available for everybody to go to right away.
So Fran, we're going to move on to some other areas, the sick leave and family leave. If I'm receiving benefits through the sick leave and family leave, in the new law, can I receive unemployment benefits?
Well, no, and I kind of visualize this as if the employer kind of had two choices. They could continue to pay under the extended family leave or the extended sick leave if they could afford to do so, and keep their employees on payroll, or they could terminate or lay off the employees, and then it became the government who was going to write the checks to the employees. But it's really an either or and mutually exclusive. You can't continue to receive pay from your employer and qualify for unemployment benefits.
So in general terms, it's one, pay from your employee or pay from unemployment benefits, it sounds like.
Correct.
So, Fran, along the lines of benefits, What about student loans? Is there some provision in the CARES Act with regard to helping our clients with the student loan debt? There was one which was called Navient. Is that considered a federal student loan? Is there anything about all that?
Well, the Senate bill, the CARES Act, did address the student loan debt and has deferred all payments until September 30th. So anyone who is on a payment plan with a direct student loan, a U.S. student loan, through one of the servicers like Navient, Sallie Mae, those are held in abeyance until September 30th. So you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief, not only if your income may be declined, but then you don't have that obligation to make every month for the next, 5 months or so. It has to be a direct servicer for the U.S. Department of Education. So Navient would qualify, but if you went to a third-party lender like Wells Fargo, for example, that would not qualify for the provision in the Senate bill. You would have to go, the students would have to go to Wells Fargo and ask for any forbearance that they might allow. It also does not affect the PLUS loans or the Perkins loans that parents may take out to help their children with their tuition.
So Fran, just to follow up on that, is that a complete forgiveness of the payments, or is it just a deferral?
It is just a deferment. They just are not going to have any collection actions until September 30th. So presuming that you were 36 months into a 360-month loan, you're still going to owe the balance of the loan starting again September 30th to try to give some breathing room and some cash flow to those that have student loan payments.
Thank you. So Eric, if we go into the emergency sick pay and the EFMLA, if I receive payment, is that exempt from the Social Security and Medicare withholding?
No, it's not. It's still deemed compensation, so your employer will still need to be withholding those taxes on that income.
And it will be taxable to be from an income tax standpoint also?
Yes.
So we have to have income tax withheld also, right?
Yes, unless you choose to not have it withheld and maybe have a little bit more taxes due at the end of the year, but at least the FICA and Social Security do need to come out.
Okay. So we do have quite a few more questions out there, and our hope is to continue to provide you with information pertaining to your questions. And as Fran said earlier, there are websites that you can go to. We also are sending out daily emails about the various topics as they come up and they get better defined by the government. So a lot of those have links on them that you can also refer to. So we've got quite a few items here. Again, this presentation will be coming out to you, so you can actually see where to go to and click on these links when you get this presentation.
And if you are a client of ours, please make sure you're receiving these emails from us, because they contain a lot of information that's important for you. In the event you have not seen these emails, I urge you to please check your spam folder and also mark these emails safe so that you can start to get them in your inbox. And if you are not a client of ours, you are welcome to go to our website and input your information so you can get in our database and you can start to get some of these emails from us.
Also, you know, Nitin, I realize if somebody gets this and you like the information, want to pass it along to a friend, please feel free to do that.
Yes, and Eric's full name and phone number.
Fran, do you have parting words of wisdom for people?
Just the takeaways that I put on the last slide. Some of these benefits, the unemployment, and if you're going to tap into your retirement, that's going to ultimately be taxable to you. And you better think about some withholding as you're receiving these payments. And I know nobody wants to think about taxes until April 15th or July 15th, whatever the day is going to be. But taxes occur on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. Every time you get a paycheck or an unemployment check, there's tax that is accruing, and it's much easier to deal with that a little bit at a time than it is to have a big balance due when you file your tax return. And of course, we want everybody to be safe and well, and practice your 6-foot wave and make people, at least look people in the eye. It's amazing to me when I do go to the grocery store, which is not often, as I'm sure we all agree. Nobody wants to look you in the eye, and that's very sad to me. I hope we get past whatever this trauma is and get to some resolution. I think we happy times again.
Yeah, I mean, what we want to pass on to from Atlas is the fact that this will pass. It will come to an end, and we hope that everybody comes out better, more in tune with families, more in tune with some of the things that we're forced to do now into the future. But we are here to help, and we encourage you to reach out to whomever you know at Atlas and ask them how we can help. So thank you for joining us.